All right, man. What's up, everybody? I have today, on the first episode ever of Miguelly's Mindfulness, we have the amazing James Gamet.
What's up, brother? How's it
Amazing
going?
James. So, James, I've known you for a little bit of a while, probably north of 6+ months.
Mhm.
But for anybody here that doesn't know, do you mind giving them a short introduction of who you are before we really start breaking down?
Yeah, of course. So basically, I'm a peak performance coach that helps people with personal development and business development, helping them optimize and become the best version of themselves, simply put. In the Marine Corps, to coaching mixed martial arts at some of the highest levels, to business development, kind of a jack of all trades. And yeah, that's basics of who I am.
Absolutely. Definitely great at what you've done. You've helped me transition to online for the first time of my own coaching career. You've helped me make money. You've helped me get multiple hundreds of followers. So yeah, there's no fake in there. And we're gonna start off with a super broad question. You ready to jump into it?
Of course, let's go.
So the first thing first gonna be is, when did you start feeling successful?
Whew. Um, that's a very good question. There's definitely a few different points. Now, are you talking more along the lines of financially successful, just that success when it comes to fulfillment, or just overall in general, starting to feel like the mindset shift?
I'm young, so I'm gonna try and keep it slightly in the young frame. So when I think of success, I think of having having money where I can go out and just do whatever I want whenever I want. I can go out to the most expensive restaurant and just not worry about the bill. Or I don't have
Mhm.
to really worry about bills month to month. Or I know that if something happens with my parents or if anybody else around me, they can come to me and everything will be fine. And that's my metric of success. So within that metric, when did you start feeling that way?
It was really when I started developing skills to work for myself. Um, Once I started venturing out of the traditional realms and found out, got the right mentors and started getting more into the online space, realizing that I was developing skills that no matter where I was in the world, no matter what happened, I was going to be able to make money. I was going to be able to make ends meet. I was going to be able to scale it. And once I started making more money than like doctors and lawyers and things like that in a legal manner, because coming from why I am, if you weren't a doctor or a lawyer, then the only ways that you were making that type of money were the illegal ways, and so like once I got to that point, and all of a sudden, the savings account was finally starting to build up, and I was able to invest more in my education and things like that. I think that would be the first time I really felt safe and secure, and like started feeling like I was having some financial success.
You said you don't make that type of money from where you're from. Where are you from? And what was that like coming up?
Yeah, so Central Washington, in the Yakima area. So its moniker is like the Palm Springs of Washington. There's a bunch of farmland, orchards, things like that. But Yakima is like a really small city, but we are also ranked in the nation number 5 for violent crimes per capita. So
Nice.
it was an interesting place to live. Also, I am older, so I grew up in the generation where the lights, once it starts getting dark outside, that's when we're supposed to go home. You know,
When the street lights come
um,
on.
yes, sir. Um, One of my best friends was in town the other day, and we were talking about how we would just walk to each other's house that was like 5 miles away, just to see if he was there. So different
Yeah.
times, but it was a little rough. Got to learn my p's and q's, like how to develop that situational awareness and to be able to read the room a bit better. Make sure we're not just spouting off saying some nonsense, because there was, especially when I grew up, there was consequences for your words. It's less dire than certain situations today. Like you saw all that crazy stuff happening in the news, but you might get into little fisticuffs, and whatnot. There was a lot of gangs, a lot of but different than TV and all that stuff. So
Right.
it was just a little rough area. And in Central Washington, you got some farmers, you got some doctors, some lawyers that were making good money. everybody else was kind of just grinding paycheck to paycheck.
Everybody, you say everybody was grinding from paycheck to paycheck.
Yes, sir.
Would you say being around that type of area and like just seeing everybody kind of struggling and it just kind of it sounds destructive the way you was describing it. Like that destruction, did it help motivate you to want more and maybe do more?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I've always kind of been bred and been taught that your actions speak louder than words. So I've always wanted my actions to reflect my choices, and I have always had that really instilled in me from a really young age from my mentors. I was lucky enough to grow up with my pops and with my some of my good friends as fathers as role models that definitely held me accountable. So I always felt I was responsible for my destination, but in my environment when I was a freshman in high school, most of my friends were seniors, juniors, getting ready to go to college, very successful athletes, really well educated, smart guys. I would see them leave. And then before I was even a senior, they were coming back. They had some high school girl pregnant and, they were not living up to their potential, fat, all these other things that just became like, it was one of those things where I was like, man, I don't want this to be me. Like, what am I going to do? I moved out of my house when I was a freshman in high school. So I was like, yo, I'm already on the grind. I'm already working, those under the table jobs. I'm already going to school. I'm already playing sports. Like, what am I going to do after high school? Is there school? Is it this? Is there whatever? So I was really kind of lost, but it really did shape my environment, really did shape who I was, the decisions I made from, the people I was in. And it really showed me the good and the bad that could be there. Because everywhere you go, there's going to be some light, there's going to be some dark. It doesn't matter if it's in the suburbs or in the the mean streets of wherever. There's still good people. There's still people that want the best for you and whatnot. So I was able to experience that really young, and that definitely shaped the decisions that I made and how I act as an adult.
What are your thoughts on the people that say things like you are your environment? Like you're kind of constrained to where you are. So like why didn't you grow up as a destructive person that just didn't want more? Why did you want more than other people?
Uh, the first thing I would say to them is that's a cop out. It's an easy excuse. You're making excuses. You're not holding yourself accountable. You're not giving yourself the ability to put your best foot forward. And that was a huge mindset shift for me, is because I still had that. I was, I weighed in at wrestling. I weighed in my freshman sophomore year at 103 with my clothes on. My freshman year I could
Damn.
weigh in with my, with my backpack for, if I didn't have a heavy
Wait,
book on.
what height? How tall are you?
Bro, I was like 5 foot nothing. I was a midget. I was like 4'11", 4'8". Like I was tiny, tiny. I didn't have a growth spurt until I had a little one towards my senior year.
Yeah.
When I went to the Marine Corps, that was when I actually like grew up. Like when it was funny because the second I got back, they were like, "Yo, everybody, yo, what's the Marine Corps feeding you, bro? Like, how'd you get taller?" I'm like, "I'm still 17. Like what's
Yeah.
up?" um, but yeah, I forgot what your question was. That was just funny. But
No, yeah, I was just saying like why weren't you the same product of your environment?
mhm. I like to take agency for what you know. One of my mentors told me, "You're a grown man. Like, take responsibility for the good, the bad, the ugly." And I was like, "All right, cool." But the bigger thing is taking responsibility for how you react to things that are out of your control. Like that's what really defines you. That's what's really going to help you become the best version of yourself. Just taking it like social media. If we go to, we live in that digital age. So if we go to social media, we can't control how many likes, comments, follows that we have, or else everybody would be like Mr. Beast. But we can continue to post content. We can continue to look at the data and start putting out our value and figure out, better ways to put our value, figure out better skills on whether we're, sending it to these people that are better editors than I am, or if I don't have the funds, I spend my time, that sweat equity, to develop the skills so I can edit, how I want my content to come out, So that was one of the biggest things that was really instilled in me from a young age, because going back to my parents and my network of mentors and coaches and stuff like that, they would hold us accountable, like with a good old butt whooping if we weren't living up
Right.
to their standards. So it really did. I felt it really did elevate me to get to that point where I was just going to take agency for myself and I wasn't going to let anything stop me. There's too many stories of people out there that came from nothing and are billionaires or failed 1,000 times and then that one thing got them off. So I was like, if they can do it, there's something out there.
Yeah. So like if they can do it, I can do it type of mentality.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, that's great. I tell people that a lot. So like with me starting off doing what I'm doing, people are like coaching is or fitness influence or even fitness coaching. It's like it's oversaturated. There's too many people, whatever, blah blah. It's like that just means it works. That just means there's something there. Why would you not entertain that? It just means there's a little bit more competition, yes, but competition's good. I mean, if you find a red ocean, you gotta make your own system out of the thing. If you find a blue ocean, what would that be considered blue ocean?
A blue ocean is like wide open. Red ocean means
Right.
there's a lot of competition. Yeah.
Okay, you're right. So yeah, so if you find something like that, and there's more people that's already doing things, just do whatever they're doing and just do it a little bit better.
Yeah.
I mean, they
Yeah.
did it before you. They're human, just like you, right?
100%. 100%. One of the biggest things was one of the craziest things, and I use it because it's something that has like an actual metric that people can see. Before before that sub 4 minute mile was broken, nobody thought it could happen. Everybody's like, no, the human body wouldn't be able to hold together, all kinds of crazy stuff. Nobody believed it. And then once, I think it's Roger Bannister, I want to say it was like 1953, four, 3 or 4, something around there. But once he smashed the sub 4 minute mile, fast forward 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, we have kids in high school, that are running sub 4 minute miles for duration. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where if somebody can do it, it's just proving it. I like to try and push myself to break barriers and like push myself to those limits where people are like, damn, that's possible. Um, but yeah, if somebody else can do it, there's no reason why I can't figure a way to make sure that I can do it as well.
So like it's kind of a lot of limiting beliefs that people have about things, right?
Yeah, most of them are excuses, and it's a mindset shift thing, because it allows you that easy cop out for saying, well, somebody's special. Oh, everybody that wins the slam dunk contest is 6'4", 6'7", blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And then you got this little white guy coming out there 3 years in a row just smashing it, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh well, what's my excuse? You got Muggsy Bogues 5'9" or 5'9", 5'6", something like that. Muggsy Bogues playing. You got that one cat in the NBA right now who's 5'9", 5'10", just smashing it. Playing in
Mhm.
the league. And oh well, now we're taking away those excuses. It is a limiting belief most of the time. Like, oh, because I came from this area, I can't get out because I do this. My friend, one of my really good friends, Omari, Jim Starks, excuse me, like gotta go by his name. One of my boys, Jim Starks, he's traveling around Europe right now, a lot of places in Asia, and that's like he came from the same era I did, and he's just doing music. He's had world tours now, but he's still an independent artist, hasn't been signed by people, just living the life that he wants to live. And it's like, man, like there's nothing stopping you from saving your money for a little bit, grinding, taking a couple extra shifts, and living the lifestyle that you want to live. It's just the matter of like, are you willing to put in the work and stay consistent and not give up on yourself? Are you willing to bet on yourself? If not, come on, man.
What would you say to the people that want more, believe that there's more for themselves, but they just don't have the push? They don't feel like the proximity of other successful people.
That's okay.
I'll give
So
it.
no, no,
I, I,
I gotcha. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was about to say I'd give an example. So like for me personally, like whenever I started jumping back into fitness,
Yeah.
but before I was already working out and I was already a fit person. And
Mhm.
then the reason why I got back into it is because I moved in with one of my buddies and he was in the military too, and it was an apartment. And I would see him train a lot, and I was like, "Oh shit! Like he can run super long. He's super strong. He looks great and all that." And it was like this limited belief of like a hybrid athlete in a way. So
Mhm.
then that's when I started chasing, and like that's why, honestly, that's the reason why I'm even to the performance that I am now. physically is because of him. So like the people that don't have that around them though, what would they do?
Yeah, that's a limiting belief, right? No matter where you're at in the world, there's people in the communities that you're around that have those similar interests. So Googling, going on Facebook groups, going on, Perplexity and searching out like, entrepreneurs near me, footballers near me, rugby players near me, musicians near me, things like that. You can find a community of people. And if you can't find a community of people around you, you really have two choices. The first one is you move to somewhere where that community is available. The second one is build it, do it. Like because there's people, there's so many people around us nowadays that want and have like that want those things. It doesn't matter what it is. It's regardless of what it is. There's people that want to learn that or want to get better at these skills or just wish to embrace X, Y, or Z. Create a school group, create a Facebook group, get on YouTube, start talking about it, create some content around it. Ask, look at, search those key terms, search those things, look for events that you can go and visit, search for masterminds, workshops, retreats. Just look for people and just go work for them. If you find somebody that you're really dedicated to or that's doing.
That's great. My camera just burnt out, but we're rocking old school.
Yeah. Let's go.
Rocking old school. Go like this. That's fine. Rock like this.
There we go. I'll match that energy. I just like
Yeah.
sit up a little bit. I got you.
About to say, but James, you don't understand. These people, they don't want to be around me. How do I
Yeah.
make myself useful to them?
Do free work. Free work. Show your value. That's one of the biggest things. I kind of picked this up from Alex Hormozy and Gary Vee. Do things that would make you stand out. Like if you want to be a content creator or you want to go learn more about content creation, cool. Start, watch some YouTube tutorials. Like watch one YouTube tutorial, go make 5 videos, you developing that skill. Watch another one, do another 5 videos, developing that additional skill. You know, and then go to, if let's just using the content creator mode, like go to that content creator, look at his content and go make a couple videos for him and be like, hey, I was watching your stuff, I really love this, I would love to come pick your brain and just learn a little bit more about the business and being a content creator. Here's some of the work that I've done so far. Because not everybody can go to school, not everybody can, like you said, like not everybody can be around those people or feels that they deserve to be around those people, and that limiting belief can really stop us from taking action or just putting things out there. Because honestly, I don't like saying this when it comes to relationships, like like people going like, what's the worst that can happen? There's a lot that can happen there.
A lot of shit.
um but when it comes to shooting your shot for skills, for networking, for doing that, the worst they can say is no, or just not send a message to you, not respond back to you. But if they don't respond back to you and you really, this is the one person that you really want to work with, cool. Figure out a creative way to hit them up on every single one of their social media platforms, send them an email, do whatever you can to reach out to them. And then guess what? Do it again, create some new stuff, reach out to them again. That opportunity might not happen right away, but you start putting yourself out there, you start building that, basically building your resume, building your portfolio, then you become really undeniable, and that's where you're proving your value to them. Like a lot of times people just want to lead with the ask. They're just like, oh, hey, you're doing this. Can I do this? And they're like, well, I have a paid community, I have this mastermind or this. And you're like, well, I don't got no money. All right. Well, what is that? Like, so people lead with the ask. Show gratitude, show value, be like, hey, I watched this podcast from you and I was really inspired, it helped me with X, Y, and Z. Boom. So I'm leading with gratitude. Maybe they respond back to it or maybe they don't, but they see it or they like it or something like that. Cool. Then you're like, hey, this is, you inspired me to actually create these things. Can you check out my work and give me a little feedback? These are, you can post these, do whatever, or that's just for content creation. But there's a lot of things like that. People are always willing to have an intern. People are always willing to have a free assistant. You know what I mean? So if
Mm,
you're providing value and you're really willing to put in the work, not a lot of people will say no, when it comes to those things. That's, you want to be a cook? Okay, go cook, go learn, go try stuff, record it, put yourself out there, show people your evolution, show people how much you're learning and how much you're building and how much you're growing for these things. And that's just kind of going with the content creation side of the house, or those little tangible traits. So there's other things obviously that you would have to do in other situations where the strategies would be different. But when it comes to something like a skill, a service, um, yeah, skill, a service, or just something that you really want to start, and you see those people that are in that position, that's one of the best ways to go about it. Just provide some gratitude up front, lead with value, and then go for the ask.
absolutely. I'm about to segue this a little bit into the military life.
Okay.
So, you know how are you familiar with Dan Coe's concept of tactical stress?
Partially. Dan Code's one of my boys. He's awesome.
Great.
One of my mentors as well. So break it down for me, so
Yeah.
anybody that's not
So,
listening. Yeah.
from what I understand, is the way he explains is like tactical stress is understanding the type of person you are, how you perform whenever your back's against the wall. So, say for example, going out to get an expensive apartment in a nice area that you can barely afford, or maybe you can't even afford unless you do more. So,
Mhm.
what do you think about that? And do you think that you applied a bit of tactical stress going into the military?
No, going into the military, no. I developed tactical stress while I was in, for sure. Like that's a huge thing. Sports, everything, right? I came up playing football, basketball, wrestling, baseball. Was actually really good at baseball. Karate and things like that. So grew up in those environments. Which, if we think about it, and we're thinking about tactical stress, that's what it is. Like, you're trying all the worst case scenarios, right? In jujitsu, in combat arts, as an adult, I'm still undefeated. That's MMA, boxing, jiu-jitsu, all that stuff. So you have to put yourself in the worst case scenario. It's only through the harshest obstacles that you can find out what you're truly made of, right? So, like, putting your back against the wall, where you have to find new pathways. One of my mentors, Dr. Benjamin Hardy, he calls it impossible goals. I think we've talked about this before, but like, setting impossible goals forces you to find out new pathways to achieve those goals, to become that person that achieves those cool goals, like nothing. So, um, so I've experienced it for sure. Coming into the Marine Corps, I actually, my reasoning for joining was really different than it being like my only case, my only option, right? I was. Do you know what the Gates Millennial Grant is, by chance?
Not a clue.
Okay, cool. So Bill and Melinda Gates, they're from, like, I don't know if they're from the Seattle area, but they live in the Seattle area. Microsoft, all that good stuff. They have a scholarship. It's a full ride scholarship where they pay for all your books, supplies, tuition. They give you a living allowance. They pay for everything. So my senior year, I actually accepted the Gates Millennial Grant, or I won the Gates Millennial Grant. Got accepted into a few different colleges, and I was like, man, I don't know if this is the right move for me. Like, I've been grinding my whole life so far. My whole life at that point, it was pretty limited. But going from working, school, sports, working, school, sports, working, school, sports, where I'm pretty much occupied my whole time. Now I'm going to go to school, maybe at like UW, the University of Washington, maybe have to redshirt. Even if I could play sports, I'm still tiny, so I would
Hmm.
have to grow into it, and redshirt, all that good stuff. But I was like, this would be the first time nobody's holding me accountable. I'm going to be in a new location. I don't have to worry about bills. I don't have to worry about anything. Am I ready to take advantage of the opportunity that's I'm being blessed with? And when I really thought about it, I just wasn't ready for it. It wasn't something that I was really ready to commit to. I didn't want to fall down the pathway of just going to school to get the degree that I'm never going to use, which I ended up doing afterwards. But
Nice.
I just didn't. That wasn't the path where I was like, I just think I would waste it. Or, worst case scenario, I take advantage of this and then I fail. I fail because I'm out partying, I'm out doing things that I shouldn't be doing, that I've always wanted to do, but I didn't have the time or the opportunities to do those things. And I really just like, it hit me really hard when I was seeing my friends that were like really good friends, mentors that I kind of idolized growing up, come back and not be living their best, not being their best selves or living up to their quote unquote potential because they just kind of blew it. I really didn't want that to be me. So that was kind of why I initially decided to enlist. But when it comes to everything else, yeah, tactical stress is huge. Like putting yourself in a position where if you know that that's the type of environment that you're going to thrive in, where you can make those quick decisions, where you kind of need that to be able to make those decisions in yourself, 100% do it. Like everybody's situation is not going to be the same, right? Some people, they need all the safety, the security, and all that stuff to be able to like be calm, cool, collected, and make those decisions. Like they're not the ones that live in the fire, that live in the fight. From the Marine Corps, from sports, from martial arts, that's where I really learned that that's where I thrive. That's where it's really easy for me to take, what some people call a deficiency and turn it into a superpower.
I hear you say a lot about like mentorship, like you got a lot of mentors and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There is, I don't know if it's just where I live, but there's this stigma around mentorship or having like following somebody and not being the alpha or the one leading, where people are just super against it. What do you think about that? Just doing everything on your own.
It's their loss. This is the quickest way to fail because you don't know what you don't know. Okay, so like we've talked about this a bunch. Like when it comes to AI, you're only as good, that the system, the tool is only as good as the person wielding it. So if, let's say, I know you're really good at it now, but let's say I sucked at prompting, and I was like, write me a book.
Hmm.
The chat is going to ask me some questions. Hopefully chat or OpenAI or OpenAI Claude, whatever DeepSeek, they'll be like, well, what do you want the topic to be about? They might ask you a couple questions, and then I'll give it some general responses. It'll kick me out a book, sure, but if I went to you, personal trainer, mindset coach, you're a nutrition expert, you're able to crush it in so many areas, you're freaking shredded, big, like, so
Appreciate it. Trying.
have, yeah, what I mean? You have the knowledge, skills, and abilities to not only help yourself get to that next level, but to help so many other people, improve their wellness, improve their confidence, all that stuff, right? But if you went to ChatGPT, or we'll just say an AI, a large language model, and you were like, hey, write me a book about yada, 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 X, Y, and Z, make sure to include A, B, and C to support these things. And first start with an outline. Boom. And it kicks out this really nice outline. Then you go in and you change it up a little bit more. And then you change it up a little bit more. And then you start writing it. Cool. Those are going to be two vastly different books. But the knowledge and skills and abilities that you've developed have been through research, have been through asking other people, have been through, a learned experience, but also just, expediting the process. Like people have already been there, done that. Nothing is new. In my opinion, I very much align with Dan Coe when he said, there is no new ideas. It's an assimilation of a bunch of different ideas from different people that they've gotten from their different sources, and then it's just your depiction of it. Like other people have felt that way, but now you're using this as like, this is how I feel about these things. So if you want to expedite the process, find the systems, operations, and procedures that other people have done to gain success, then that's where you have to find a mentor. You have to do the research. You have to read the books. You have to figure out what's worked and hasn't worked for other people, so that you, one, don't make the same mistakes, or so that you can actually track the things that you need to track in order to make the proper adjustments to optimize, to actually learn and develop those skills. So like for me, an unwillingness to learn from anyone is a bit of ignorance. And that's, you don't know what you don't know. So I very much have taken the philosophy and the mindset of anybody and everybody can teach me something. People that I thought were horrible leaders, they taught me what not to do. And then they had some good traits, and I was like, okay, cool. Well, I can respect that about these things. But I hate how this is, how you're conducting yourself for these things. So I'm for my Marines, for my people, I'm going to make sure that I'm not that way, you know? So finding a mentor, finding somebody, any content creator you're watching, guess what? That's a mentor. Any books that you read, guess what? That's a mentor,
Yeah.
So finding somebody that you can actually ask questions to and they're going to help you, man, that's crazy. If you wouldn't want to do that, that's like building a partnership. It's kind of crazy to me now.
Yeah, I agree. In the Marine Corps, was there any mentors you had in there for certain different subjects?
Yeah, 100%, 150,000%. So for different traits were different things for sure. I had my direct leadership, like I had my squad leaders, my fire team leaders, my ops chief. I had them to sit and learn more about leadership in general, but also so he was a mentor of mine, but he wasn't a direct my direct supervisor. I guess that would be the best way to put it, because he's like not necessarily in my chain of command because he's with a different section, same
I'm
platoon,
gonna
different section.
I'm gonna run with it because I don't know military slang.
Yeah,
I don't know.
like,
My brother being in the military, he's a Marine too. He says like he calls me a civilian. He says these y'all have amazing acronyms. I don't know none of them. I'm like okay, Roger. Every time I say something, I say, okay, Roger. I don't know what the fuck that means.
yeah, yeah, 100%. That's why I was trying to like. I'm like, wait a second. It's the same thing with like science and all that stuff. Half the words, I'm like, no, I know how to spell it, but I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know how to actually pronounce it.
But that
Like,
doesn't do me any good.
um, so yeah, I had a bunch. One of the guys when I first came in, I was the most inspirational player on my football team. I got voted, and that was something that I really like prided myself on.
What's your position?
Free safety, smashing people with my little self. I
All
was really,
right.
I was really quick. Um, but I always kind of prided myself. I didn't really recognize it at this point, but like the MVP trophies were never something that I was like really wanting. It was like the most inspirational because that was voted on by the other players, um, things like that. I really love helping other people, even from a young age. I really love helping other people get better at whatever it is they want to do, like lifting people up. I don't know why. I just felt like that was always something that I was really drawn to. Come to the Marine Corps, I got to do the guide thing in boot camp. So, I had a leadership position in boot camp and um, really good physical fitness tests. For lack of better terms, I aced a lot of the classes that I was in leading up to getting to the fleet. So, getting to where your permanent duty station was. Like I was on for a few things, like one of the awards back there, that thing is an honor graduate. Plaque means I placed number one overall in the class. So I'm used to having a lot of success. Like my mindset was really, cemented that I couldn't fail. Like if I had the team, if I had the support, like there's nothing that I can't do. I've always had that belief, and one thing that my dad always honed in on me was that. So when I get to the fleet, and the person in charge of me, I absolutely hated. Like, I'm not going to I'll put them on blast like that, but anybody that was at Alpha Battery, First Battalion, 12th Marines, you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. They know what's up. But I hated this guy. He was not a good leader. He really knew his stuff. Like he knew his job very extremely well, and like nobody could touch him on that area. And because of that, nobody could really touch him. Period. He was very uh, clean cut. Didn't really go out. Didn't do any of that stuff. So he wasn't one that was going to mess up. We'll just put it that way,
Mhm.
right? But when it came to his leadership skills, his people skills, very very lackluster. And I got in trouble because he was like poking me one day.
Like,
And
actually?
yeah, he's like, you didn't block, and like, I was just like, hey, Corporal, don't touch me again. And then he poked me again, and I hemmed him up, threw him against the Humvee.
Oh
And
my
then
god.
thankfully, a guy that I really respected, he scooped me up real quick, so nothing really escalated. And I didn't get in trouble for that. That was, it was a different Marine Corps.
Mhm.
But after that, I was like, man, what do I do? Like, this guy's never going to let me get promoted. It's also back in the day where they could just non-rec you and just say, like, he's not ready. No, there didn't have to be a paper trail and all of that stuff. So I knew that I was probably going to be stuck with this guy for another year and a half, 2 years, and I was going to have to deal with this. So it was one of those things where I was like, almost mentally breaking. Like, I was like, what do I do? Like, I can't deal with this guy. We just butt heads too much. And that was when a guy that I really respected from a different section was like, look, man, you work really hard. You do all these things. Like, every person that you encounter, he was the one that actually told me, he's like, every person that you encounter is going to have good and bad things about them. I'm going to have things that you're not going to like about me, but it doesn't mean you don't like me. You can, and it doesn't mean you can't still get these good things from me. He's like, it's just, you have to learn and you have to be willing to work with and just throw that personal stuff, to the side, because it doesn't matter, facts over feelings. And I was like, all right, easier said than done for sure. Um, but it was one of those life lessons that really translated to a lot of the other areas of my life. A general that I met when I got, so the first time I went to Iraq, I hurt my shoulder. Um, Ended up having to come back, and I was working for a battalion, which is like the higher level regiments. Like, anyways, um, yeah, you know what a
I'd,
general,
I'd love
right?
to hear it though. Yeah.
Yeah. So, um, I was luckily enough, I was talking to this guy, and he was like, uh, you know what, Lance Corporal Gamet, I've never had a bad day in my life. And I was like, what? And he's like, I see it. I see it in your eyes. And I was like, what's that, sir? He's like, you don't believe me, but I want to tell you this. And he gave me a little breakdown of the story. He was like, my mother was, I get the job switched up. I can't remember if it was mom or dad, but one was a teacher and the other one was a teacher and one was a doctor. Right. So they were in very high stress environments and they had to deal with a bunch of things. And or psychologists, there we go. And what they instilled in him was like, you have 15 minutes. You have 15 minutes to feel your feelings, you know, um, to feel the sadness, feel the emotions that you feel. But then we have to work out of it. We have to figure out a plan to move on. And he said, and that's one of the biggest lessons that I've learned. And that's how, he's like, we've lost a lot of Marines. We've been on multiple combat missions, this and that. I think, and he's like, and he literally was like, I have, and he started like naming off people. And I was like, he's like, I know every single Marine that I've lost that's been under my command. And I
Wow.
was like, phew. And he's like, and that's one of those things that affects me. But on the other side of that, there's all of these other people that are counting on me to be able to make those decisions and still do it. So he's like, you get that 15 minutes to really think about it, but you can't waste 23 hours and 45 minutes because of a 15-minute thing. I was like, man, yes, easier said than done.
Yeah.
But when you're honing in those skills and you get those repetition, it does become a mindset shift. It does become a practice habit. It does become a a routine or a ritual that you can escape out of to utilize as a tool to get you to where you don't have bad days. And that's obviously, I think he was, going a little bit above beyond, but it made a lot of sense to me as I, thought deeper about it. Like, look, if you, again, going back to taking responsibility for how we react to things out of our control. Some things happen. You got these people all the way over here, and now you have to deal about their families, and you have to deal about, the morale of the Marines that are around them, the people that really cared about them that weren't probably in that, but are still in the fight. How do they stay in the fight? So yeah, it was one of those philosophies from some random person that I wasn't at part, technically a part of my chain of command, but somebody that I should have never had a conversation with in the Marine Corps. I was able to, and that was, so there was always things that I learned from everybody in the Marine Corps, and because every 4 years you're somewhere new. So that's a revolving
Yeah.
pool, all different parts of the world from everywhere, that served with us. We had in boot camp alone, I had people that were rich that had, a Lamborghini was their car. And he's like, oh, I do this. And then, verified after. I was like, damn, this guy was really rich. But the little dweeb, he was, sorry, I didn't mean to say that, but he was a little dweeb, really weak, could barely do the minimums for the physical fitness test. Wasn't the smartest guy in the world, but he earned the same title that I earned. He became a United States Marine. He overcame the fire. He put in the work, and knocked out the crucible and things like that. And it's like, man, like you have it all. Why would you join? Like your family's well off. You're this. Like, why would you join? And just hearing his story, I was like, man. So that it really, I've always loved to hear other people's stories. So it's weird being the person that's like telling the stories.
Mm.
Because there's so many things you can learn and experience, and perception is reality. So how you view the world and what you think is, that's your truth. I for a long time I didn't really understand that, but being in through the Marine Corps, being in those things, and it really did shine a light on how different and how anybody can really be a mentor to you if you're willing to and you're open to learning.
How long were you a Marine?
8 years.
I'm sorry, you're still a Marine, always a Marine. But like, how long were you in the military?
For 8 years from 2000. Sorry, I'm drinking tea right now.
Okay.
8 years from 2005 to 2013.
Okay. And when did you start thinking about what you're gonna do whenever you get out? Like, when did that come to mind?
2013.
So,
It was so okay. So once you're in the Marine Corps, especially for like the ground side, everybody kind of thinks about doing 20, but a lot of people are always like, I'm just getting out. So they're, as soon as they get to the fleet, short time after, they're already thinking about when their end of active service, their EAS, when that's done. So their 4-year term or 5-year term for some people, they're like in the wing, they have like longer schools. They're already thinking about getting out. And I'm like, man, that's crazy. Like, why would you just think about getting out? Like, I get having the rigid structure and some things like that people don't thrive in. So they're waiting to get back to their own, like they can wake up whenever they want to type of, mentality and whatnot. But I was always kind of in that spot. Like you want to hear another little funny story?
let's get it.
So initially, you'll hear this kind of a lot. It's a very common theme, that when they initially enlisted or something like that, they kind of get screwed over with their job.
My
So
brother, my brother. Yeah, yeah. Reality though. So cut you off real fast. I really want to tell that story though. But so
yeah,
my brother first went into the military, and Marine Corps too. He was getting his, I don't know the y'all terms, but he was supposed to be stationed in New Orleans. And New
okay.
Orleans is only an hour away from where we live. So he was about to be right there, right around the corner. He was ready to come home, was all excited, whatever. And like a week or two before, they just fucked him over and they said, no, you're going to Virginia, buddy. We lied. You're going to Virginia. You're going over here. You're going to be far from home. And it was like a whole thing. It was a whole scene. Tears were spent and all that. It's interesting. I guess from the outside looking in, only reason why I can see why people will want to get out is because they don't have their own control over the situation. It's like, for instance, like when something like the vaccine came around,
Yep.
wasn't that something that you were mandated to get?
I was out way before that. I was out in 2013. I was like in 2020, 2021-ish. But yeah, I actually lost one of my jobs because I was like, no, I'm not getting booked. Like I was like, I don't know enough about it. There
Fuck
hasn't
that
been
shit.
and that's for me, it's like to each their own. Like now seeing some of the things that have happened, I'm really glad that I didn't. But that's here nor there. But yeah, things like that. It's one of those things where you don't have absolute control of your life, which is a really interesting thing because there's so many things that can go wrong regardless of what you're doing. But there's a little bit of an uncertainty of where you want to go or actually being able to take a vacation or do this. Like, can you leave? For sure. But does that mean that they're going to approve it? Not necessarily, operation tempo.
That's it.
So it's one of those things where it's not the best for everyone. It's, you know what I mean. But there's so many benefits to it. But it's not the best situation for everybody. It's the same thing. Somebody goes and gets a 4-year degree, and then they just figure out that they don't want to do X, Y, or Z. Then they go to the graduate school for a completely different field, type of thing. Same type of thing. But okay, yeah. So go back. If it's not in writing, it's definitely not guaranteed.
It's not happening.
Yeah. Um, and if it is in writing, but just on paper, you haven't seen it electronically anywhere, it might not be in the system too. So initially, when I signed up, I put in for the O2 field. The O2 field is intelligence. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what it was. I just knew it sounded cool, James Bondy like. My recruiter was like, uh, my recruiter wasn't the best recruiter, but the recruiter kind of
Seems
like
to
was,
be a common theme.
yeah. But actually, man, another recruiter in the office became a really good friend. And like, if you want to go down the mental health side, we can talk about that. But he was a blessing. Like, he was an O2. He was a excuse me, 0311. He was an infantryman. He was with 3-5 down in California. He's one of the most amazing people that I've ever met in my life. Um, and he helped me through, like, figuring out, like, well, what is this? What is that? Kind of like going through my job. And I was like, okay, well, what's O2? He's like, it's intelligence. And he's like, it's not the James Bondy stuff that you'd probably think it is. You might get stuck in one of those spaces, but more likely than not, with O2, you're probably going to be a specialist, which is like O231, which, we do a lot of maps and, it's not as fancy as it feels. It's not like the movies type of thing. And I was like, okay, cool. And he's like, but there's counterintelligence, there's, recon, there's a bunch of other things that you can still get into that's not your primary MOS, your primary job, that you'll be able to get into with that specific job, a bunch of skill sets. And I was like, okay, cool. He's also the one that really helped me, guided me through the decision to decide not to go to school and actually, stick with it and join the Marine Corps. Um, because until you ship to boot camp, you're not really, you signed a contract for sure, but until you go to boot camp, you're not a Marine. It's not something that you actually have to do, which kind of sucks, but because you did commit to it, but it's not something you actually have to do. So, wayside. But when I went to boot camp, I thought I was going to be I was going to be in intelligence. We got our butts handed to us every single day, like Full Metal Jacket style. We got our butts beat, which is understandable. The way that I looked at it is, all of these drill instructors just came from combat. Like, all these drill instructors just experienced what we're definitely going to experience. So,
What did you go in as in the
what,
Marine Corps?
what I find out my job was,
Yeah.
okay, cool. So this gets to it, right? So, I initially thought I enlisted as an O200, because you don't sign up for a specific job, you sign up for a field, right? At the school,
Oh,
they give
okay. Which is
you,
intelligence, right?
correct.
Okay.
So then I go, they're asking me a million and one questions. I'm just, doing what my recruiter told me to make sure I don't mess up. Um, go to boot camp, deal with everything. They don't bring it up till the very end of boot camp, like almost the very, very end of boot camp. They're like, recruit so and so, and then they say your job. So they're like, recruit Gamet, 0844, fire direction control. And I'm like, hey, senior, what does that mean, sir? And he's like, it's artillery. And I'm like, what's artillery? So I didn't know what artillery was, didn't know what FTC was. He's like, you better go talk to your recruiter when you go home, because you're a fire direction controlman. And I was like, yes, sir. I was like, all right, whatever. Found out, it's basically the person that sits in a freaking computer, does like the azimuths and deflections to help get rounds from a howitzer, which at the time we were using 777s. basically we do the math to make sure that that when they shoot the howitzers, it lands on target, it lands in small areas. So if there's we hit um, so initially I did that, but we did like the Marines is a lot different than the other branches. I actually did 2 task force military police missions in Iraq. One was as corrections, and one was kind of like border patrol, border security, where we did convoy security and let people in from some from Jordan to Iraq and from Syria to Iraq and outside. So that was kind of like our main thing that we did on both of our missions. Fast forward when I put in my package for for my lateral move. So I put in for a lateral move, but the way that it works out is when you're putting in for job positions, there's only so many. It's called a boat space. There's only so many school slots, boat spaces available per year, based off of what Congress approves as the budget. So then they say like, okay, this many people this many people are leaving the Corps in this bill or retiring or getting out. So we need to bring in. So when I reenlisted, I had to reenlist open because I wanted a tax-free bonus in Iraq. So I reenlisted open, and I was waiting for the schoolhouse to open up. And so I did my interview with the master sergeant and for counterintelligence, and they were like, "You're good. We accept." I passed the financial stuff. I passed the like all of the little things that qualify you for a top secret pending MOS designation. So I was like, all I got to do is wait for the schoolhouse slot to open. I'm about to be counterintelligence. Fast forward, we get fast forward. A couple of my Marines passed the recon NDoc, and I was like, man, if they could do it, I can do it. I passed the recon NDoc, and then I was thinking, man, well, do I want to go counterintelligence? Do I want to do recon? Do I want to do at the time, MARSOC was just standing back up, so that's another special operations, thing, Marine Corps Special Operations Command. I was like, man, there's so many cool things that I can do now. Like, what do I want to do? Like, I never thought I would have these options. Like, this is insane. And the good old, so the football coach was the sergeant major, my football coach. So I played football. So the battery office or the battalion office is like right here, like literally, like this is the battery office right here. We're in the building right next door on the outside. So the sergeant major's office is like, I'm looking at the sergeant major's office. I'm outside. Sergeant major goes, "Hey, come here." And I was like, all right, sergeant major. So I went upstairs. With hey, sergeant major called me. So I ran upstairs, went to sergeant major. I'm standing, pray, rest. And like, devil dog. And I was like, no, sergeant major, like, what's up? Like football. We didn't have a game that week. So I was like, what's up? I don't really do, but like I do, and he was like, "How's it feel, Marine?" And I was like, "What's up, Sergeant Major?" He's like, "You're going to BRC," and I was like, in my head, I just passed the recon NDoc, so I was thinking the basic reconnaissance course, aka BRC, and I was like, "Dang, I don't know, Sergeant Major. I thought you had to put in for it, like because I thought I had to make the choice to go to, okay, I want to go recon. Let me go put in my application and sign some paperwork. I'm going to recon." He's like, "Devil, you about to be a recruiter on the streets?" And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, you didn't know?" He's like,
But now you know.
he's like, "Basic recruiters course, devil dog." And I was like, "Oh my god." Like that's the one job that most people in the Marine Corps are like, I don't want to do that. Like I don't want to be knocking on the doors of these people that don't want me to be knocking on the doors and dealing with, snotty nosed high schoolers. Like at the time, they're like a few years younger than me, I'm like, oh, these young kids.
Yeah, and you were blessed with the experience.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was like, oh my God. And then they were like, okay. And I was like, all right, well, it is what it is. Let me go take the best of it. But it's also one of those duties that a lot of people get in trouble because they're in a position of power for the first time. They're idolized a little bit by certain people, and then their integrity gets questioned, and they come up lacking. And that's why I tell people you can't say you're a cheater or you can't say you're not a cheater unless you've had an opportunity to and you said no. Because there's a whole lot of people that just don't put themselves into a position, and then when they do get put into a position, they fail that test. So it's one of those things where I was nervous. I was nervous because like, man, there's so many people that lose their careers from here. Like, there's certainly some people that go out into recruiting duty, and next thing you know, they're just skyrocketed, in their promotions, and they get meritorious promoted out in recruiting duty, and they come back and they're, getting promoted, or they're on the selection list to get promoted to that next rank. So they can really accelerate your career, but it can definitely freeze frame your career. So I was really nervous about it, and that's kind of where my public speaking training, came into play. But like, yeah, I ended up getting selected for recruiting duty, so I didn't even get to go and do my special sauce, stuff. I was like, all right, cool, whatever. But in my mind, as long as you're like staff sergeants in a blow can still kind of lateral move in the Marine Corps. So going into recruiting duty, I was only a sergeant. So I was like, all right, I'm at the bottom of the totem pole. So if I do get selected for recruiting duty, and if I do get selected for like a meritorious board, or I get promoted to staff sergeant, I'll still be in a position where I'm not high enough where I have to worry about not being able to switch my job up or not be able to take advantage of some other opportunities. So I wasn't worried about it in that instance. I just didn't want to get in trouble and just, find myself to a test that I couldn't pass.
Yeah, I got you. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna segue a little bit. So we're gonna digress a bit from the military stuff,
Yep.
which is great, by the way. You said a lot of words I don't understand that I'm sure I'm gonna have to search up later on. I'm gonna ask my brother about. I'm gonna watch it back with him. He'll be like, all right, so this means this, and this is this. Yeah, this really sucks. That's what he's probably gonna tell me. So you were featured on Forbes, which is
Yeah.
an amazing thing. And someone as young as me, whenever we think Forbes, we think money, bad boy. That's what we think. We don't know nothing else. We don't know why you're there. We don't know what business you made or whatever. We just know they make money. That's why they're on Forbes. So
Yeah.
what was that like? What was that experience of being featured on Forbes? What is the process of that? How'd you even get there?
The process is relatively long to an extent. So I'm going to give you guys a secret, but I'll give you a secret at the end. All right. So the process is kind of long. The way that I had to do it is they do an interview. So once there's like, okay, well, we can do a story on this person, they go in and they do an interview. Then they take that interview and they can make it into a story in a bunch of different ways. But they do their due diligence. Like Forbes, any of the bigger publications, they do their due diligence. Like they're going to fact check. They're going to, like, if you say a number, they're like, all right, cool, show us the number. Where did you get this number from? So they're very much on that.
Oh, so
So
they're super detailed. Like they really want to make sure like this is you. This is legit.
yeah, 100%, 100%.
So basically, if you're on Forbes, you're the real deal.
To an extent, yeah. To an extent, yeah.
Cool.
There are like Forbes literally came out and kicked off a bunch of people that got paid. So you can get paid. The thing about marketing is you can pay for almost any placement. Doesn't matter if it's a podcast, doesn't matter if it's a publication, doesn't matter if it's a TV show, or you're trying to get a bestseller on whatever. There's a paid version of everything. Some publications frowned on it. Some publications, they don't want it to be, they're not wanting to do paid sponsorships and things like that. They want things to be organic. They want things to be, tracking the stories that are the most current. But there are paid ways to get into certain media publications. Forbes did come out, I want to say 3 years ago, and just knocked out a bunch of those people that were paying to be placed into Forbes, and they went in and they basically scrubbed the list and took their stuff off. That's kind of why. So just another little segue. That's why if you see like the sexiest man of the year, like when the sexiest man of the year was, Wolverine or Deadpool, they're just hot at the time. You can pay to be on the front page of Men's Fitness. You
How
can
much
pay.
is that?
It depends. So electronic version, that's easy. Electronic version, that's easy. It's still probably going to be a couple grand, few grand. But when it comes to like the print versions of those things are like, can be anywhere from 100,000 to like 250,000. but the press that you get from being the sexiest man alive. Now, when you do the press tour and you're talking on the Daily Show or late night with Conan O'Brien or whoever, now they have, oh, well, you're the sexiest man alive, and this is your project, and so that you have all these sound bites of all of this other press, and PR, public relations that they're doing. That's why you'll kind of see, if you kind of go back and you see like what big blockbuster film was going around these specific times, and you look and see who the sexiest man in the world was or all those things, it'll be whatever stars of that blockbuster film. I believe Dr. Dre or it was either Dr. Dre and Ice Cube or a couple people that are from that sector were like, oh, you want a Billboard number one hit? Cool. $250,000. Let's make it happen.
Hmm.
And it's like, it's one of those things that it does elevate your brand. It does elevate your authority. It does make people spark up and listen, right? Just like that little, ooh, but like you said, when somebody's in Forbes, you're like, automatically there's like a little twink that's like, oh, this person must be legit.
Yeah. So, a quick question: would you agree with the thought that people say when like all type of attention is good attention?
No.
Why
No,
not?
definitely not. Um, all type of attention doesn't mean that you're going to be attracting the right attention, right? So let's take for instance, you have. I'll give you two examples. So first one, we have the Liver King, right? The Liver King went hard on his brand and his personal image, being that natty guy that was living these natural attendance, yada yada yada. They asked him straight up, "Are you doing steroids?" He's like, "No, never." Da da da. Vehemently
All
denied
natural.
it, and hated on people that were, saying that they were coming out and saying that, like, no, I'm not natural. I do this or that or whatever. Um, because of that, because he went so hard on it, and somebody was like, well, here's the proof that he's not. All of a sudden his brand image was tarnished. All of a sudden he couldn't, he had to backtrack. And you look at him now, it's a really sad story, like just looking at how it's affected him because of everything and all the people that came along with his team and his family and all that stuff. So that was super negative, right? And then you have people like The Rock, right? Dwayne The Rock Johnson. This guy was one of my, like, I love his mouth. He's so good at spitting on the mic and like just talking and being so charismatic. You're just like, damn, he's got the X factor, man. This dude's dope, and he's got so many things. If you smell, you're like, that's what's up. I want to have a catchphrase like that, and whatnot. But for the longest time, he was trending upwards. He was getting like 250,000 new followers every single month. One of the most famous people on Instagram at the time, making $1 million plus per sponsorship post, and then he had his own brand, his own tequila, and his own blah. So
Yep.
living the high life. He's doing all the things that he wants to do. Awesome, but he got caught with that in and out thing a few times, which people were like, "Yo, this guy's kind of lying to us. Like, this is weird." Comes out with this phony apology. Then he goes on the Joe Rogan podcast. Sorry, man, 3 hours is going to expose you. 3 hours of talking, there's going to be trends. There's going to be things that pop up that is going to show the audience a little bit more of that real version of you. That's why I think long form content like this is awesome, because it gives you a chance to really start talking out your ideas, ask questions, all that good stuff. But at that point, he just didn't have an opinion on anything. He just kind of cast it away and really didn't have a solidified stance on anywhere. And I really do believe if you try to appease and attract and be the voice for everyone, you're going to attract and you're going to please nobody. So going back to The Rock, he had that PR blunder and had another PR blunder from the Joe Rogan podcast. And then for the first time, he was, for the first month, he didn't have 250 new followers. He actually lost 250,000 followers, which means, even if he had that same trend of 250,000 new followers were going to be joining his account, that means he lost at least 500,000.
Yikes.
You know what I mean? So that's one of those things where it's like, not all press, not all attention is good attention. If it's aligned with your brand, and if you're willing to stand for that whatever, and you're willing to stand 10 toes deep, and stick to your guns, and stick to your opinion and all that stuff, okay, cool. Then if it falls along those things and it's something you're really passionate about, and you really believe it, then okay, cool. Then yeah, that bad press is going to give you more fans that are the right type of fans that are going to be around you, that are going to stand 10 toes deep with you for those same things. And it's going to pull some of those people out of your audience that aren't your ideal clients, that aren't your super fans, that aren't those people, So it does have a positive and negative impact, but I would say no, like not all attention is good attention.
Absolutely. And what was, to refer back to the Forbes thing, what was it like whenever you seen, so you said, I know you said there was a process you had to go through. What
Yep.
was it like whenever you seen the article? Was there any feeling of euphoria?
So I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel good, but it really was less about me, and it was more about like what it represented. Like the couple times that I've been featuring like Forbes people and whatnot, it's the first time it was just kind of my story as like a really rising figure in the PR space. The second time was really more about the mindset shifts, the peak performance coaching, and um, for me, that wasn't necessarily the summit. It wasn't like the top of the top. It wasn't like something where I was like, okay, I made it to Forbes, now I'm done. It was more like marker,
Mhm.
a marker, something that happened because of these things. It was a reminder that when you commit to and just make miles and progress or perfection, like eventually you'll start seeing and reaping some of the rewards, and other people are going to start noticing and things like that. Um, but it's not like I like live for the articles or the recognition. It's really more about the lives that I've changed and had an impact. That's where like the high came from. That's where I was like, man, like, yo, these guys put me up for it. These guys did this, uh, yeah, it's like most of my rewards behind me are from clients like being like, all right, I'm putting you in for this thing, and I was like, oh, that's cool, because it just means that I had this impact, and because they're highlighting this impact, I might be able to impact even more people that are looking for those type of services, or that type of guy.
I don't know if I've ever told you this before. I love the quote in Just Make Miles. I love it. I absolutely do. I have a similar one. I don't know if I stole it from somebody or what,
Okay.
but I say a little bit of something is a lot more than nothing. And
Uh-huh.
it's kind of similar to Inches Make Mile, and I love it. And it works for me within my sphere, the things that I do
Yeah.
within the online coaching, or even just helping people out with fitness in general. Because what I notice is that people just overestimate whatever is required, and they just do too much, and then they just fall off, they burn out and all that. So I love that quote. So let's say, in order to be like you and then to adopt this inches make miles mentality,
Uh-huh.
what would someone have to do to get up to, what are the parameters people would have to put in place to be at your level of success?
At my level of success,
Yeah.
just don't. No. Yeah. Um, really good question. I think it kind of falls into like five main categories. Like the five main categories: first, like embodying inches make miles, progress over perfection. Like that's something that's got to be there. Like you can't be afraid to fail. You know, um, one one of the guys in the Marine Corps was like, stop being a mouth breather, and 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 earn your oxygen. So that always like that, like, so inches make miles, and then earn your oxygen is a big thing. Like show up. No one's coming to save you. No one's coming to help you. If you want it, like, get out there and get it. There's tools. There's the internet. There's books. There's people are easier to connect with nowadays than ever before in history. If you want it, earn your oxygen, show up and make it happen. Um, and then Discipline before motivation. Motivation will get you started, but it's not going to necessarily get you to the end result. Discipline
Agreed.
discipline builds the trust in yourself. We all have limiting beliefs. We all deal with imposter syndrome. If you don't, awesome. Kudos, but we all deal with those type of things. You have to proactively adjust your mindset and become that other person. Live in your why, find your purpose, Um, so definitely discipline before motivation. The more you stay disciplined, the all the little wins that you get, the daily, the weekly, the monthly, the quarterly goals that you're able to say you stuck to these things. Now you're really starting to embody the person that you need to become to live the lifestyle that you want to live. So discipline builds trust in yourself, because we can all do positive affirmations. I think uh, yeah, I think a bunch of things along those things. But when we dive into the psychology and just the science behind becoming the best version of yourself, it really does boil down to, like, do you believe in what you're saying? Do you believe in those affirmations? No. Why not? Because you haven't had the track record to prove to yourself that you're evolving, or that you have the ability to wake up at 5 a.m. or take a cold shower, like rinse your face with cold ice water from the bottle and spread the
So,
lemon.
so is it kind of like compounding your small wins?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Going back to inches make miles, right? Um, Live, learn, and teach. That's the ways to learn. Like, experience creates wisdom for sure. Don't hoard it, like, because the way that you truly learn something is by, you have to go through these 3 steps. You have to learn it from some source. You have to do it. Like, you might not be the best at it, but you have to do it. The way that you truly gain a thorough understanding of whatever it is by teaching others, teaching it back, because you're going to get questions and people are going to ask you different things that maybe it never came up in your mind, and it's okay to be wrong. It's okay not to have the answer, but at least you're on that journey to have the tool set to find the answer for those things. And the more questions you get asked about, in all these different ways about these specific things, it's going to help you develop a better understanding of whatever it is. So
Yeah.
really, if you're trying to get successful, inches make miles, progress over perfection. Earn your oxygen, show it for you, build in that discipline over motivation. So do the things that you don't want to do because you know you should be doing them. Live, learn, and teach. Get that practice. Get that practice in and be able to spread your knowledge. Like, we're after do this last one, and then legacy over likes. Be remembered for how you shared and how you served the people that you were meant to serve, and the why of what you're trying to do, not how loud you were on social media or how you said you were the best person ever, right? So legacy over likes. One thing that has always been one of my biggest aspirations is to ensure when I pass away that all my knowledge and skills and abilities are put out into the world to help educate and help other people expedite their process, and nothing just goes to me with the grave, you know. Um, and one thing that you actually told me was, like, man, you're being greedy, because I told you, I was like,
You
man,
are.
I'm not even thinking about putting
You're
content
gritty.
and it's right. It's right. It really did motivate me. I have, like, a whole bunch of stuff now that I've uh, packaged up into a more conversational way to get across to the audience, because I get stuck in that analysis paralysis,
Your
stage
background
where,
looks great now. I don't know. I don't know no excuses no more.
yeah, I know, yeah, right. So, yeah, so that's the thing. It's like, I got to the point in my career where I didn't necessarily need to do as much on social media. So I took that cop out of, like, I'm just going to do things behind the scenes and work with referrals and work with these other people. But I did myself a disservice because I wasn't living in my fullest, and I wasn't doing the things that I actually really wanted to find purpose, or that I found as one of my core missions, is to make sure, so I appreciate you for saying that. And, like, once my stuff gets out there, I'm definitely going to be giving you a shout out.
Yeah. Same thing back to you. And then the other day when we was having that call, He was
Mhm.
talking about just doing the one thing that you what's the one thing that you stopped doing that was beneficial?
Mhm.
And then I gave it thought and I was like, oh, well, it's like hitting the heavy bag. So I went to go hit the heavy bag. I felt great. I loved it. It just helps with fitness all around. It's a great form of cardio. I think every single man should know how to fight or just have some type of combat skills for one, for yourself, and most importantly, to protect the people around you. So like, I couldn't find a single excuse. So I was doing myself a disservice too. So I was like, well, fuck, he's making a good fucking point. and
Mhm.
every and I don't make all the calls, but every time I do make the call, I don't I will admit my arrogance. But like every time I make a call, I'll get on there and I'll hear y'all say something, and I'm like, okay, I got you. And then I'll apply it to something the way y'all presented it, and I'm like, oh fuck, duh, they know what they're talking about. This is what they do. Who would have thought this is what they do? Yeah, it makes sense.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's the huge thing. Is like, I used to have the worst relationship with money. I hated money. Money's the root of all evil. I never had it, so I always made that excuse. Oh, I don't want it, And then when I started getting it, and I was able to buy some things, I was like, well, what does that do for me? It does, like, I don't feel any better about myself, from these specific things because that wasn't something that was part of my, core pillars and whatnot. But one of my mentors, Paul Getter, he's actually a pastor, but he's like the internet marketing nerds. It's one of the companies that I work with. Um, he just sat me down and he's like, look, like he gave me some proverbs that relate and show that the more money that you make, the easier it is to help and spread your impact. Because if you're able to have a content team and all these other people and all these players in your company that are allowing you to focus on the higher level things and put out your knowledge and your expertise and inspire and this and that, now all of a sudden, you're, instead of being a solopreneur where maybe you're not so good at these other things, so you're not getting your message out there as much. Well, now you can have that wider impact. And the way somebody put it to me was like, no money, no mission. Like no money,
Mm.
no mission. So if you're a nonprofit, you want to run a nonprofit, well, guess what? You still have to do sales. You still have to find grants. You still have to pitch and show why your mission is important. And there's still reporting things that need to get done and yada yada yada. So that was huge. I was like, man, that makes a lot of sense. And then same thing with a for-profit business. Well, guess what? If the things that you're doing with your company aren't making money, well, guess what? Eventually, that company is going to close down, and eventually, that company is going to get you might get fired, or the whole division might get laid off, or like what's going on right now, where just 1,000 people were just fired, from the Department of Veterans Affairs because they weren't told. They were just they couldn't log back into their computer that day, type of thing. So
The fuck?
yeah. So it's crazy, but it's one of those things where I had a limiting belief, which reinforced my bad behaviors or my a mismanagement of funds and whatnot. And then when I was finally able to change that belief in certain things, I was like, oh man, like this is powerful. Like I need to make more money so I can help and improve more people's lives and things like that. So yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. Let me know if I was getting this message the correct way. The way I heard it is be is kind of more of a blunt way. Be kind of selfish to help people. So I kind of tell people within like my fitness chat, I tell them like be selfish, put yourself first, and get in good shape because you being in good shape is going to give off positive energy because you're going to be a happier person. You're going to be a better person for other people because maybe you have children and you being in better shape will allow you to actually play with your children. So yeah, maybe you may have to spend a little bit more money on some better food. Maybe you might have to spend a little bit more money month to month on gym equipment, but it's all for a greater purpose. So it's like be selfish to a degree to help other people out.
Yeah, 100%. You hit the nail on the head. Like, because just thinking about this, right? So, like, your life is built up with a certain foundation, right? So, like, if we go back to like peak performance and whatnot, and we just kind of go into some sciences and whatnot, the truth, the truth is, you can't meditate or hustle your way out of chronic fatigue. If your biology is broken, your performance is capped. Most people try to create and build some type of castle or a foundation just out of sand. That's one of those things where you're just like, what are you doing, man? Like, what's going on? Um, so like if we're thinking about just a bottom of the pyramid, peak performance type of thing, sleep is one of those biggest things. Like how well do you sleep? Because just because you got 8 hours of sleep doesn't mean your quality of sleep was that good. If you're not tracking it, how can you adjust? You just wake up feeling, oh, I need more sleep. you know, uh,
Mhm.
on the flip side of that, like Kobe was talking about, all I need is 3 to 4 hours of sleep a night. Because he set himself up for success to be able to only really like deep, drop into that deep REM sleep right away, and then he's popping out of it and he's recovering. So he's recovering and one of the most successful athletes of all time.
Wow.
Um, yeah, yeah. So after we look at sleep, we've got to start looking at like, what's your fuel? Like, how are you feeling your body? Where's your focus at? And then finally, we can get into like the flow of things. But like, if your sleep and your nutrition are garbage, then chasing flow is like trying to sprint with a broken leg. It's just not going to happen. Um, so like, that's one of those things where if we go about it and we try to accomplish all these things at once, we try to make all of these things, all the 20 steps, we try to accomplish all of the things at once. It's a way for that burnout. It's a way for ourselves to fail at a couple things, cementing our old beliefs and pulling us back into our old habits. So like
Yeah.
before you even try to optimize your focus, you have to start by optimizing your foundations. What are the things that you can control? Tracking your sleep, your hydration, that your macros or your caloric intake. Um, I mean, this. Like, you can eat 2,000 calories of donuts a day, and if you burn 2,500 calories based off of thermodynamics, you're going to lose weight. Does that mean you ain't going to get diabetes or you're not going to feel like trash? You know what I mean? So it's like it's surprising because common sense is not a common virtue anymore. So like when we talk about these things, it's like, yeah, like, well, what are you doing for here? They're trying to do all these other crazy things. So it's like,
Hmm. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. So I'm gonna admit my jealousy as a person that likes to pride myself in the way that I speak and the way that I get my message across. You and I have two totally different forms of speech, like two totally different. I'm way more blunt, and you're just way more like, I like listening to you. Like, I like hearing you speak, and I like sitting down and being taught by you. How did you get to that level? And like, how much reps and how many years, or what did you do? What was your process of that?
oh man, um, one was finding a mentor. Um, yeah, the biggest thing was finding a mentor because I've always been one that's I don't like the way that I speak. I don't really like the way I speak. So I was always like, man, I was very envious of people like Lex Friedman or Chris Williamson, or I always forget his name. Who's the CEO of the Diary of a CEO?
You got me.
He's a very he's an awesome guy. Diary of a CEO, check him out. But like Simon Sinek and Gary Vee, all these guys. I've always been a big person.
Stephen.
Huh?
Sorry. Stephen Cliff,
Yes, there we
right?
go. Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
Stephen Bartlett.
yeah, there we go. Stephen Bartlett. So I was just like, man, I wish I could articulate myself like that. I was doing one. Communication is by far the biggest skill that I think everyone should learn. It has to do with sales. It has to do with learning. It has to do with listening. It has to do with being able to articulate yourself appropriately and being able to understand that this is the way that I need to say it with this person in order to make sure that they're getting my point or my message. So it's one of those skills that I'm like, I gotta develop this. So I really, really, really started looking into different mentors like um, Vin on YouTube. He's freaking amazing. He has a bunch of like really good
Yes,
tutorials.
the Asian.
Yes, 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 yeah, yeah.
Super good. Super good. Super good.
So like him, to take a step back, um, smart. So I got a definition for words have power, words have meaning. So when I think about somebody that's really smart, I think that somebody that's a genius in their field and they can talk over your head, and they'll say things, they can say normal speech, and it's just way over your head. It's not something that's coming across as like, all right, I know that I feel like you know what you're talking about. Like, I don't know what you're talking about,
Mm.
But then there's like a level of super intelligent people. And like the intelligent person can speak rocket science at a level that the dumbest person in the room, AKA me, can understand or feels like they can understand. Like, okay, I get that concept. I get that feeling.
Kind of like the
Um,
bell curve, kind of like a little bell curve thing.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Dumb people explain it in a dumb way, and like the super smart people explain it in a way you can understand. And then you have the people that try and be over about it, that you just goes right over your head. Like, what the fuck you saying?
Yeah, yeah, and we've all had somebody like that. It was a teacher. Like a lot of times, it's a teacher that is really, really like they know their stuff about political science or history or whatever. Where they so we'll just say history, right? So they're like this history teacher that knows all the right pronunciations and all the facts. Well, are they a historian writing articles discovering things? Not necessarily, you know, but they know how to talk over your head. They can make you
Right.
feel like a So, yeah. So I wanted to make sure that my knowledge comes across the way that I hope it comes across, and people find value in it. They just don't think I'm a smart guy. Like they're like, oh, this guy's the smartest guy. I don't want people to think that. I want people to actually understand and like feel what I say. So the first thing is like I stopped trying to impress people with fancy words or acronyms or things like that, and I really started trying to understand them and meet them at their level. I feel like communication is a lot less about speaking and more about listening, just like sales. Like, I'm not trying to sell you something, I'm trying to guide you to have clarity on what it is that you're looking for so that I can properly guide you on the services that you need in order to, get to your end goal. So um, finding the right mentors, studying neuroscience, influence, storytelling, and all those type of things. I started really putting myself out there where I could like live those experiences. Like if I was wanting to learn more about writing, I started doing a lot more copywriting. I wanted to learn about producing or PR and how, the nitty gritty behind these things and how do people really get famous and whatnot. So I put myself into a position to win an award, for PR. um,
I love that. I
yeah,
love that.
so it's that thing where like I was like, all right, cool. I've been taught how to do it. I'm practicing it, and now as a consultant, I'm able to teach other people, other clients, how to have that success. So um, that was one of those things where being able to experience it and live it with professional athletes, with my people in the military, with people and a bunch of different business ideas. That's where like I really started developing those skills and meeting people at those different levels and like getting asked questions that were that I would have never thought of because it's not how my brain would look at a situation. Like being able to put in those things, that's where I really started learning how to better articulate myself and really start developing those skills. It's just a muscle, like if you don't talk for a while, it's going to be hard to get up there and spit your stuff. But if you're creating TikToks and reels and you're like, hey, 3 things to do this and 4 things to do this and 5 things to do this, and the number one thing you need to do here, and you just get used to talking that way, you're building up a muscle so that when somebody does ask you a question about anything, you're just like, oh, okay, well, 3 things that I think about this are 1, 2, 3. Boom. And then you ask a question, so you kind of talk in reels or TikToks. So
Mhm.
it's a
Yeah.
skill muscle.
So the don't use it, if you don't use it, you're gonna lose it type of thing. Yeah.
Facts. Facts.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we're gonna go up to our last thing now,
Okay.
is the fighting side of things.
Yeah.
So I heard you say something about professional fighters, right?
Mhm. Yep.
That is a very foreign world to me.
Okay.
Just like the whole fighting world and just what it takes to get there and the training. I've done very baseline level of like jujitsu. I've
Mhm.
done very baseline of kickboxing and things of that nature. What is it like training those type of people? And like how do you motivate them? Oh wait, sorry. Weren't you a fighter yourself?
Yeah, yeah. So still trying to fight every now and then. Still trying to compete. I'm gonna get back into my season, but now I'm older and whatnot. But yeah, so that was going back to it. That was a part of learning how to communicate with people because I've had some issues with that, when it came to fighting because I got thrown into a coaching role very, very early on in my martial arts career. Like as I really started jumping into training and whatnot, I started jujitsu. 7 months later, I won Gracie Worlds, which at the time was like one of the top no-gi, grappling tournaments outside of ADCC. Won a bunch of those other little tournaments, not other little tournaments, but like tournaments like Naga
Yeah.
and things like that. Um, so in my area, because of how I was finishing people, I kind of got noticed for jujitsu. I was like finishing people. I had like an average mat time of a little bit under a minute,
Damn.
and I was submitting everybody. So I was really blessed with a good team, an amazing coach with Salami Mafia, with John Salami and Nathan Orchard and whatnot, and Phil Schwartz. But I was put into this leadership position with my MMA team because we were at a boxing gym. So, like the boxing coach ran boxing practice. One of the other fighters ran kickboxing. One of the other fighters ran wrestling. I did jujitsu and combat jujitsu, and then we all just sparred. So we had a small team, but everybody on our team, I think we were 26-0 before we lost our first competition, first match. And that was just because the kid, he was a bad little mofo, but he he's in high school still, had a girlfriend, all that stuff, gained a bunch of
Ah.
weight. And then he came into practice on Monday. Coach was like, hey, you want to fight on Saturday? He's like, yep. And then he disappeared to cut weight for the next 4 days and he lost, So it's hard to count that one as a loss, but it is what it is. But we took that team, we built up our reputation. I had to develop my skills and how to articulate these movements and how I did things. Because it was like one of the first time I actually had to explain to somebody how I was doing these jujitsu things or how I was, mixing in this stuff for MMA. And because of a couple of the fighters that were on our team, when we got pulled into, at the time it's called Rose City FC, Rose City Fight Center or Fight Club. Um, that's where I had like Mike Pierce, a bunch of guys from like the UFC, like Mike Pierce, the Healy brothers, Bellator champion, Ben Primus, UFC guys right now, current UFC fighters like Ricky Simone, my boy in one championship, active fighter in one championship. Hopefully he'll get a fight for that title soon. Hero. I was kind of just thrust into this position where people would ask me questions, and then all of a sudden, I was one of the people they would want in their corner. At the time, I didn't understand why. I was like, I don't know, I'm just the amateur fighter. Like people just, I don't know, I'm just helping people. Like sure, you know. But then they all like I got a lot of respect from them, and they treat me really well. So again, developing those skills to articulate to those type of fighters, it was one of those things where I was meeting them at their level, and then instead of trying to take what they're currently doing and like swap it to be like, no, you have to do jiu-jitsu this way and have to do, I'm like, no, you have the great wrestling, like do these things. So I met them at their level and I was like, let's give you the tools where you can be better at these things, where you can be more dangerous at these things. So that was very much my style is like, I don't want you to be a cookie cutter version of me. I want you to be the best version of yourself, so being able to actually be in the gym with them, actually training with them, actually posing real problems for them, things like that. And because I showed them that same respect, we even when we were going light, it was still very active, and we were still like acknowledging the openings and things like that. We weren't trying to take advantage of each other. That really did elevate, where I was at with coaching fighters, and that really gave me some amazing opportunities to work with and train in the same rooms and coach, some amazing people out there.
Was there any similarities to people that you've coached like in actual business ventures versus fighters? Is there like a common theme of limiting beliefs or anything like that?
Yeah, of course. The same people. I always do my best to extrapolate the lessons I learned from one thing and apply it to other areas of my life. So my lens is kind of like looking at the similarities between the different worlds and kind of blending it in together to be like, all right, it's cool. The lessons, the hard work, the discipline, the dedication it takes to get good at anything is the same skill that you need to develop to get good at anything. So if you can do a high level of anything, if you can put the hard work, the dedication, the consistency to be great at one thing, I promise you, you have the skill sets to be great at anything that you want to be great at. It's finding that passion, finding that purpose, finding your why to be able to dedicate towards those things. And the people that are the most dedicated in their crafts when it comes to mixed martial arts and in business, same exact thing. They were very open to being taught. They're extremely good students. They implement right away. Knowledge is power. That statement is bullshit. Like, knowledge isn't power. The implement the implementation of knowledge is where the power comes into play. That's where you can learn your styles. That's where you can adjust fire and optimize and scale your technique or your skill sets to manage a team, your skill sets to do content, your skill sets to run a business. um, so yeah, I think there's a lot of similarities, and on the flip side of that, there is a lot of similarities when it comes to limiting beliefs, when it comes to having that imposter syndrome. Especially when somebody uh, wins a few fights, or they haven't won, they don't feel like they've had a tough fight, or this or that, and then they get called up to the bigger stages, and they know these same people are bad mofos as well, and they're like, oh, and they want to talk the talk, but there's still something in their head that's saying that, like, I don't deserve to be here, I don't belong here, and that's a lot of times you'll see that with fighters that are like undefeated. They've never had a loss, and then they experience their first loss, and they're never the same after that, or they never fight again after that, because that one thing chipped away and pulled over the veil to show them that they're actually insecure and they actually didn't believe in themselves as much as they said they did, type of thing. So they had that one thing happen to cement that bad behavior, to cement and show that they don't, reinforce that thought that's a limiting belief that they don't belong there, and that's what causes them to fail. Same thing for business. They have a bad month, or they, have one business venture that's not being as successful, and they start comparing themselves to other people in the industry, and then they give up and they go back to the 9 to 5 that they hate, or they pivot from this offer to this offer to this offer to that offer, and they never like really submit, and they never do their due diligence and give themselves the time to be able to actually test and see if they can make this business work.
Yeah. I was I was speaking with my brother earlier. We were talking about limited beliefs,
Mhm.
and kind of like the thing you was talking about, like they took their first big loss. Correct? You're saying they took their first big loss and it kind of just fucked them up, and they kind of got out of it.
Yep.
Me and him was speaking. I was like, I think the worst thing that can happen for anybody. Well, let's keep it in the spirit of men. I think for a man is like to start off doing something really well, like just start off really good at something, because you don't get the character development along the way. Like, for example, for something like live streaming like this, not many people are currently watching live,
Yeah.
and but I know later on, and when I keep doing it and I keep getting better at it, that eventually a lot of people are going to be here and I'm going to perform well because I've already got the reps in now. Next to, let's say I just started off and I have like hundreds of people doing come and watch me, and I'm stuttering, I'm asking horrible questions, everything's shit, I've got shit presentation, it's
Yep.
just shit. Like the worst thing that can happen is you start off in like a good spot trying something new. That's what I think personally.
I mean, the evidence does kind of support that. To be honest, like there's quite a few people that I've consulted with that have like they're running $1,000 offer, or like a 500 to $1,000 offer. Um, they had a huge audience, or they had some additional things that were kind of just the right way to be successful. They drop those launch posts, or they drop a post finally saying that they're doing X, Y, or Z, and then they get $30,000, $50,000 the first month, but they earned it, but they didn't really have to earn it through like a little bit of the grit or the DMs or having a hard sales call and things like that. and then the next week or the next month they're back to doing what they were doing because they had a couple hard weeks where, they got two no's on a couple sales calls, and they're like, it's whatever. you know.
Yeah.
So you see a lot of people easy come, easy go. Fast money, quick, fast money in, fast money out. So yeah, I 100% agree with you. Like it's one of those things.
So we're gonna digress back to fighting, and I'm gonna throw a wrench in there. I'm gonna throw a wrench in the conversation, right? I'm
All right.
gonna bring up my own video of me boxing. All right. So this was yesterday.
Yep.
This was yesterday,
Okay.
and I was hitting heavy bag.
Mhm.
Mind you, the goal was to sweat, but that
Okay.
doesn't matter. There's still you can always look for opportunity to get better, right?
Yep.
So here on live, I'm gonna have you tell me why I suck. Let's see if I can.
Go.
Let's see if I can do this. So, boom.
While you're pulling that up, I want you to like really think, because like a big thing for me is intention behind anything, right? So like if I were to tell you like, okay, cool, all you got to do is play the piano for 15 minutes a day, and all you did was bing, 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 bing for 15 minutes a day. There was no rhyme or reason behind it.
Mhm.
You might be able to bing, 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 or you might be able to put something together at the end of the
Right.
year. Doesn't mean you'll be that good, but if you go into it with intention, where you're like, all right, for the first couple weeks, I'm going to do these different keying exercises, and then for the next few weeks, I'm going to work on these additional ones, and then a few weeks after that, we're going to work on these couple songs, and then this and that. At the end of the year, now you're able to play a few songs. You're going to be a whole lot better than if you didn't have a plan, you didn't have intention. So if your intention was to hit the bag and get sweaty, then we'll see if you were able to get sweaty.
Can we see it? Can we see it?
Yeah, it's a little
Okay.
small. If I can, yeah, okay, I got it.
Okay. So let's see. Let me know if it starts playing. It might be laggy. I don't know why. Hopefully it works. I've tried this before and it wasn't the best presentation. I'm gonna
Gotcha.
be super upset if this doesn't work. If not, I'm gonna have to go to my Instagram.
Oh, did you post it on Instagram?
I cut it up on my Instagram. So let's see. Yeah, I cut it up on my Instagram. Just the fast moving parts, but okay, this is not working. So let's try this. Let's try to go to Instagram real fast. Bring this up, bring this down. Boom. Profile.
Now, do you want me to break it down technique wise, skill wise, things you can improve on, or more just like
You're the
what?
coach. I don't
Okay,
want to be shitty. I'll tell
okay,
you. I'll tell you what. Okay, I'll tell you like this. What I need, what I think that I need to improve on is
yep,
whenever I throw a punch,
yep,
either a jab, cross, whatever it is, I
mhm,
feel as though I can't move. I feel as though I can't move. I feel like I have cinder blocks on my feet. If I feel as though I try to move, I'm gonna fall.
okay,
Right.
mhm, yep,
So let's see. Start screen share. Instagram. Okay. Can you see? Can you see Instagram?
yes, sir.
Okay. I don't think I can bring this up anymore.
Okay. All right.
So
Technique wise, not too bad. There's definitely a lot of like things that we can improve. And I can see why you feel like you're stuck in the mud, and that has a lot to do with the balance. But go ahead. Make
okay.
what are you saying?
No, I was about to say, so whenever I'm trying to step back, whenever I'm pushing off of this forward foot and I'm
Yep.
trying to step back, that's where the unbalance comes from.
Mhm.
So how would I catch my balance on something like that? How would I balance myself? Am I too wide? Am I not wide enough?
So it's not necessarily that you're too wide. You are a little bit wide for my liking. And you notice how when you're throwing your punches, like you got some decent movement. There's some things that we can do to be more efficient. Like with that back leg, you're you're moving and you're pushing off of it kind of right, but you notice how it's still not really pivoting on it, and you're kind of standing up with your rear leg, where your rear leg's almost getting straight when you're hitting those shots.
Talking about this leg, right?
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
So like when you're throwing and that's kind of getting straight, that means your hip is in a certain direction and your foot's in a certain direction, so that more of your weight is on that lead leg. So it means that you're not going to be as dynamic as you would if you were like, let's say, like squashing a bug or sitting back into your stance a little bit more, like bringing that back foot up a little bit more so that you're not at that angle. Like see how your body's like in a, almost a straight line from your foot to your shoulder. Like that means you're leaning way over. We're not
Mhm.
necessarily the way that you're loading up. Like I would prefer if you were loading up where your rear shoulder was almost to your lead knee and your back heel was like you were squashing the bug. Like if you're hitting a baseball bat or
Mhm.
like you're hitting a ball as far as you could, like squashing a bug or like put, with the back foot. So right now your foot is doing this. So it's just kind
Mhm.
of off. Where what I would want you to do is dig the balls of your feet into the ground and allow that heel to like flare out so that you can
Okay.
over. Right. So then we're loading up here. So then everything is corked as opposed to being here where we're diving and we're like shooting that spot instead of being loaded and then firing that shot with your body. Like punching hard. There are some people that naturally hit hard. If you watch Triple G is one of those guys that when he hits somebody, they feel it. Like a lot of times, have you ever gotten hit in the face before?
Yes.
It's not as bad as you think, right?
No.
Like it's one of those things where like if you get hit in the body good, you're like, oh my god, that hurts so bad. You
Yes.
know? But if you get hit in the face, a lot of times it's more just like like it's more like a whoa, what was that? Okay, cool. Like I'm here, type of thing. So so some people hit hard, like Triple G, where people get hit, like people that are used to getting hit, get hit by him, and they're like, man, that hurt. So just kind of give you context over there. Anybody with clean technique can knock people out if they hit in the right spots or if they have precision and technique because it's your body that's doing the work for you. It starts with your feet, starts with your hips. It's like how you move. Like when you watch a lot of Mike Tyson throw shots, it barely looks like his hands are extending until he hits that line.
Right.
Boom, and then it's like full extension, because he's letting his whole body do the movements. And that's where the quickness and that's where the speed comes into play. So if you were to like squash the bug a little bit more and sit down into your stance as opposed to like elongating to feel like you're loaded up because now we got a bunch of weight on our lead leg. So it feels like I'm heavy and I'm loaded up. But then I'm lifting my elbow up. The more your elbows leave your body, the more the other side has to compensate to rebalance you. So like if you kick and you see guys that are kicking like windmill stuff and their hands are like way out here, a lot of times that's when you're going to see like a lot of people where like they can only throw like one kick and they're not really balanced and whatnot. But if you watch like the Thais or the Dutch kickboxers or like Moroccan kickboxers, stuff like that, uh, and they're throwing, their hands are just staying uptight and whap, whap, and their body and their everything else is doing the motion to smash in that bag or pads or that person. Or when they cut, they're basically taking their thumb and putting it in their back pocket. So it's like off their shorts as opposed to windmilling it. Um,
So,
so
so
one,
were you saying sit more into it? Like I was too straight up, like the knees are too straight. Sit more into it more.
yeah, like anytime you feel like you're coming up, like just kind of drop your stance, right? You want to
Okay.
be as centered as possible for the most part. Like the weight transfer is the huge part. So like if we're loading up the hook on the lead side and we're like coming into it, yeah, of course we're going to bring that rear shoulder over towards our lead knee so that my body's twisting this way as opposed to leaning on my lead hand to be able to throw that shot. So being able to like twist around your axis like there was like a pole going through the top of your body, so you can't move that. So it's like you have to rotate to be loaded up so there's tension. Oop.
Well, I don't know what happened there. It's quite unfortunate. I hope y'all are enjoying this.
Yeah, all right, my bad. Boom, boom, boom. There we go.
There we
Okay,
go.
it's like rotating around your body to get that torque and that tension to be able to uncork that thing and be able to release the pressure, right? Um, so again, like sitting down on your back foot, sitting down on your hips, dropping a little bit more that way. Same thing. Like Conor McGregor's run at this. Well, he was when he was at the height of his career, where he would play the levels, where he would like be really heavy on his lead leg, throw his shots where it feels to the opponent. It feels like that's his range and that's the farthest he can get. And then once they got a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more complacent, he would leave his head and his chest basically in the same spot, but then he would set his hips and his feet more underneath him, where now he has another 6, 8 inches that he can reach those people now. But they didn't see the adjustment, the adjustment to the gap. So then he's able to knock people out because they feel like they're out of distance. They're not necessarily worried about it, but he just covered another 8, 12 inches that he can fire through with that big cross, So squashing the bug, setting your hips a little bit more would be one of the big things, and rotating around your axis. So when you throw your jab, being able to like keep up here where it's nice and tight. So you're firing off and it's here, looking down the pipe, looking down your middle finger, your pointer finger, and knuckle, making sure those are what's hitting the target, every single time, having a little bit more intention behind it. So if you're just trying to sweat, boom, like I can do a drill where you get a good sweat in, but we're just working single punches where it's like you work your jab for 30 seconds, then you switch stances, work your new jab for 30 seconds, throw your cross for 30 seconds, switch stances, throw your cross for 30 seconds, so you're getting a lot of reps on things. You're going to get tired, and it's less
Yeah.
boxing at that point.
I did one where I walked in there and I did like a ladder type of thing. So it was like a jab, one jab, and then reset, and then two jabs, and then it would keep going up to then all the way to 10, and
Yep.
then you start again at 10 on the way down.
Yep.
What do you think of that as an exercise or a drill?
That's cool.
You think?
That's cool. Everything works. One of my favorite drills is something that you can do anywhere, almost anywhere in the world. If there's a wall, you can do this drill, right? So you just line up against the wall. Like let's say the edge of this screen is my shoulder. So from here, I'm going to put my shoulder almost against the wall where my stance is there. I'm just going to practice throwing my jab where my elbow isn't flaring way out, where my elbow is not popping up. It's more of a hinge. Boom, 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 boom. So the retraction and the extension is in a straight line, as straight as possible, right? Um, as John Jones says, the punches at the end, that little snap, the little turn, turning your knuckles over. It's not turning your knuckles over as the punch is going. It's like here and then that turnover at the end. It's a boxer thing. It's gets the abrasion to get like cuts and things like that to get the fight stopped. So back when boxing was virtually like unlimited rounds, you got to get a cut. You got to do something to drain these people. If you're not knocking them out, we got to get some type of, stoppage. So like that punch, that little turnover at the end of your punch it doesn't necessarily increase the power as much. That's why you see people when they're in tight and they're, in that clinch space or they're in like the phone booth space and they throw an uppercut like that, and you just see somebody get flashed and they get, knocked out or whatever. You see a nice little elbow where the guy just bumps him. It looks like he just bumped him, but they throw a nice little elbow here and you see a guy drop like a sack of potatoes and you're like, what just happened? And then you watch the replay. It's kind of with the elbow and you're like, dang. It's so power when you're able to put your body mechanics into it and properly load things up and be able to, create that streamline, find opportunities, timing beats speed, accuracy beats power, right? Francis Ngannou, one of the hardest hitting people out there. Like I wouldn't want to get hit by him for sure. Anthony Joshua has been known to knock people out, but he's also known to go to decision with a lot of people. You get one of the most powerful people out there, one of the most technical heavyweights out there. We all saw what happened. Anthony Joshua just sparked him with, nice clean 2 hands, jab cross, bang, bang. He knocked him down like a few times, obviously, but that was it. He just, instead of being wild, he just kept it nice and technical and was able to, fire those shots really quickly. And when you have somebody that's like loading up for those big shots and you're able to streamline it, man, it's like a train wreck. So as long as you're first, I was just with my boxing coach before this and he was like, meter beat, meter beat, meter beat. Doesn't matter if it's jab, you're meeting their combination with your combination or you're beating them to the punch when you see them start throwing, and always be the last person throwing strikes, because like you exit that big win, you're winning, the exchanges and whatnot. So little things to tweak, and it looks like you do some damage. Like for sure, you got this, you got some speed, you got some pop to you. You're not doing one of the most common mistakes where people like hit and they push through the bag to be long. Like as soon as you're finding you got a decent mind for the range. Like you're putting yourself out a little bit longer with your jab cross, and when you're coming into the hook, you're at least covering the distance and putting yourself in a position where it would make sense for you to throw a hook. You weren't like super extended or like baby shotting those hooks, you're in a pretty decent spot. So yeah, a few little tweaks, making sure your conditioning's good. I would put you in an amateur fight.
Roger that. And I'm glad you said that because I want to ask about that. So there's going to be a question before the final question.
Okay.
So I want to ask, what do you think the gap is between in a fight of someone who's never been trained, someone who's amateur or let's say beginner, and then amateur and then pro? How big is that the gap? Because me personally, I feel as though someone who doesn't fight at all goes against someone who is like amateur will get sparked, fucked over. Just like jiu-jitsu, that was
Yeah.
like super technical.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
So there's like, because I know what you're saying, like you're saying like on average, because there's so many like little tangible, intangible things that like some people are they just gritty, and they can take a
Yeah.
beating. They're
Yeah,
just like,
anything could happen. Yeah.
So when it comes to the difference, I think that people's belief in their physical capabilities is vastly overestimated. Like they believe they can do whatever. Like you don't get a lot of guys that are like, oh, I can go beat John Jones, or not, excuse me, John Jones. I can go beat LeBron James in a basketball game, or I can beat
Right.
Steph Curry in a 3-point shootout. You don't get a lot of that, but you get some crazy people out there that are like, I could smash Demetrius Johnson or Raw Tang or these guys. I'm like, just because they're 145 pounds, 150 pounds, like they're
There's more testosterone there. There's more.
yeah,
There's more testosterone. There's more ego there. Nobody can. Okay, I lose to some pigskin. Oh, that sucks. But it's a man. You don't understand. I don't care how much experience he had. I'm a man, and I think I can win. That's what they say. And I see red.
yeah.
I see red.
That's the funny thing. So okay, so amateurs, because there's also like we'll just go with the extremes, right? Because amateurs, there's some promotions that are amateur promotions that basically are just a bunch of people that aren't training anyways, But you have places like the Rumble at the Roseland, which is or Tough, and some of these other places that have amateur fights, but every one of these amateurs are basically low level pros. They train on the daily. They probably have another job, or they're just like almost homeless, and they're just in the gym grinding. This is what they love. This is what they're doing. If we're talking about those level of amateurs, they're not quite on the pro level yet, where they can handle with like the UFC, Bellator, like those type of guys. But they're training and they're in the gym. I would say like 9 times out of 10, that person that's training is going to smoke somebody that's never trained in their life. I don't care if you've scrapped with your boys or scrapped in these things. We saw what happened to Kimbo Slice and Dada 5000 or something like that. Arguably two of the nastiest street fighters in the world. Most recognizable for sure. They went against some people that were trained. They got smoked.
When you say 9 out of 10, are you saying like everybody has like a swinger stance?
Basically,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Basically,
Gotcha.
anytime there's a strike, that was another thing I was talking with my coach today about. If we're doing jujitsu, if you have no training, you have zero chance. I don't care how strong you are. I don't care how big you are. Like if you don't train in jujitsu and you go against a purple belt or higher, that's
Fuck.
from a decent, yeah, you're screwed. Like there's even if you're a high level wrestler, even if you're a decent high level wrestler, if you don't have jujitsu experience, there's no doubt in my mind that I would submit you. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that I don't care how athletic you were, if you play football, basketball, you're a bodybuilder, it doesn't matter. Like, at that point, I'm going to put you to sleep. If you don't tap, I'll put you to sleep. But when we have that striking, like, very rarely do you see somebody that wasn't supposed to win a jujitsu match not win that jiu-jitsu match. They were better technically. They had those athletic abilities. Like Gordon Ryan. Gordon Ryan's not losing to anybody in the world. That doesn't train their ass off. In jiu-jitsu. Like if they don't train that much, I don't care how big you are. I don't care what sports you're good at. I don't care anything. You're definitely not going to beat Gordon Ryan. But he's the cream of the crop for jiu-jitsu, right? once you get into striking, there's always that additional element that stuff happens. You know, maybe you got a little complacent when you're striking and you put your hand down a little bit, and this dude just swings for the fences, and you thought you could take it, but it actually does hit you. You know, um, so there's where it's like a little bit of that stuff happens. You know, but when you watch like Mayweather, when you watch the title pro, you look at Mayweather against Canelo. Canelo was still 43-0 at the time, I believe, when he fought Mayweather. Mayweather was just that much more technical than when they fought, and Canelo was just that little bit of inexperience when they fought, and he outclassed him. He made it like literally looking at the ropes, looking at Canelo when he hit the ropes, and you're like, damn, like that's crazy. And then you look at how much he's grown since that fight. Like that fight was literally a catalyst to make Canelo almost an untouchable in multiple weight classes. You know, until he finally hit that weight class where the guy was almost equally as skilled, but had that additional size advantage, which played a part. You know, but like for the average Joe, for somebody that does train, especially in striking, they can be in there. They've had those hard sparring rounds where they were able to like figure out where their composure is, and they've taken hard leg kicks and body kicks, and they've been hurt before, and they were able to recover. Like that experience is hugely beneficial. Now, if we're talking about just a street fight, even more so, anything can happen, you know. And if somebody double legs you and drops you on your head on cement, it's going to be a bad day, you know. But if we're talking about uh, an amateur fighter with no, or excuse me, a fighter with no training that feels like they're a badass and they've knocked some people out in the streets, coming into a cage match where now they actually have to go through that grind, you know, oh, I've knocked out everybody in the streets, but they're not in like those actual fights like Jorge Masvidal was, and you know, where they're actually grinding and fighting. They've, you know, false cracked some people and knocked some people out because they weren't looking, that type of stuff. All right, cool. Bring that person in. I almost guarantee that person that's been training is going to mop the floor with them, and it'll be quick too. Like Bradley Martin, he's dope and he's big, but he got tossed around when he did jiu-jitsu. So anything that I've been able to see of him is definitely one of those things where it's like, yo, it's not going to be a good day for you. Like
Yeah.
you know, like so in that instance, I think there's such a huge gap between knowledge that if somebody is a grappler that can take this person down, then it becomes like you have no chance, you know. But
Yeah.
striking, stand up, if you get into you know, an engagement, things happen.
Yeah, I found that out very quickly with jiu-jitsu. I walked into one of my buddy's gyms, and it was like an open mat session. And I
Uh-huh.
walked in there, and you know me, big 6'1", black and strong. I'm like, I know people are gonna like tap me and shit, like whatever, but I'm still gonna give them a run for their money. And there was this older guy, like had to be later 50s, and he
Yep.
was like 5'8", 7", pushing it max. He looked out of shape. He was a black belt, and I'm like, okay, well you're washed, buddy. Oh, we can go at it. So we go, and I've never been put in a faster headlock in my life. Like we was touching up on each other, right, doing the thing, and
Yep.
then next thing you know, my head's under his armpit, and he's grabbing me up like this, and I'm like, all right. It's been real, y'all. Thank y'all for having me. I'm never coming back. It was nice. I'm like, yo, why is like how did, and me and him was actually just in the open mat session the other day, and I
Mhm.
was so locked in. I was like, no, you motherfucker, you got me last time with some bullshit. It's not gonna happen again. You hear me? And me and him was going at it. At least I thought we were. I was going at it. I don't know if he was trying, but I was going. I was like, I need this. Okay, my ego died last time. I need this back.
Mhm.
So like
That
the gap between is so crazy between like super experienced next to novice is like
have you ever played basketball with somebody that was like in the league?
damn near. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's the same. It's like
yeah.
um, there was a guy in Yakima that was from the I think he was a Golden State Warrior at one point. Um, just so happened to jump onto his team when we got picked up. We were on the court for like 5 hours. Like it was my first game. Didn't even warm up until the end when we were like, "Oh, the gym's closing." I don't think he missed a shot the entire time. You know, and I was like,
They're
"Man,
crazy.
it's just
They're,
it's just different." You know, and it's like
yeah,
there's levels to this, and it's like
yeah,
because of the ego, because of the testosterone, because of the, you know, the hope the hope that you could protect your family or, do some damage if the time called for it. If you're not trained for it, it's like trying to get on stage for a speaking event, and you ain't ever practiced a speech or talked in front of an audience before. Like, it's not gonna be good, to tell you that. Yeah, there's levels to the game. It is fun when you do get somebody that sounds like they have a little bit of an ego, so they'll keep they'll keep hitting in their skill sets, and like the more aggressive you are, a lot of times for me, it's easier to submit you. Kind of like can flow with them where they are used to resistance. They're going to hit this flow state, and they're like, "What the hell? How am I get?" And then they'll run into the same trap 5 or 6 times, and they'll just be like, "How do you keep catching me in guillotines? Like, I don't get it." You're like, "Well, you keep doing the same thing." They're like,
How did my ankle get there? I didn't put it there. How did it get there? What did you do? They got the memes where like the black belts, like they have like a third hand that comes out. This shit. That's definitely how it feels. Oh man, it's terrible. But
"Yeah,
I, we've been taking up a lot of time. Wow, we've been going for a lot longer than I thought. So we're gonna come up on our final question. Obviously, you have presented and you have proven yourself multiple times that you are obviously a jack of all trades. So the final question would be, what advice would you give someone to find their thing?
whew."
That would be our closing question.
Okay. Um, it's a very good question. So, like, well, like first off, if you're feeling lost or unsure of what to do right now, good. Like, give yourself that applause, that pat on the back. That means that you're definitely asking the right questions. Most people are like sleepwalking through life and they're just chasing somebody else's dream. So if you're actually searching, you're already ahead of the curve. That's huge. So, but here's what I'll say for clarity. Clarity comes from engagement, not necessarily thought. You don't think your way into your purpose. You act your way into it. You try things, you fail forward, you follow curiosity, not just comfort. Like, I didn't find my thing. I earned it through pain, through pivots, through getting back up when I just didn't want to. I felt like, I need to do the safe thing. Um, I was a Marine, I was a fighter, I was a coach, a speaker, an international speaker. Each chapter of my life gave me different tools. Each breakdown gave me new insights. And really through it all, I just kept asking, what makes me feel alive? What pains have I lived through that others are stuck with as well? What do people come to me for, without even asking, them to come to me for something? Or what would I want to do, and what would I be passionate and be motivated to get up in the morning and, do the things that I needed to do, even if I wasn't getting paid. So, like, if you're just starting out, you're young, you don't really know what you're passionate about. Don't wait for passion to hit you like some lightning, strike, and like, oh my god, I just really want to do this now. Like, build your passion through commitment and action. Show up, learn, suck at something long enough to get good at it. Like, test. Don't give up the first try. Fail forward, like I just said. And don't just chase likes. Chase your impact. Chase being able to help the people that you are meant to help with. Doesn't matter if it's a product or a service or whatever. If you're an artist and you're just going to put art into the world and make people think, that's still a good thing. Your thing isn't about what you do; it's about who you're becoming while you're doing it. There's going to be a lot of pivots in your life. Don't necessarily get stuck up on one identity as like, I'm just this, I'm just that, to anybody, because if they're not paying your bills and you're not in a committed relationship with that person, their opinions don't really matter. So, like, to kind of just like summarize it, I guess, like, follow your curiosity over clarity. Try the thing that makes you lean in. Stack in those reps. Repetition is the father of learning. Do the work even when you're unsure. Confidence is earned through repetition. Document the dots. Journal what energizes you, what drains you, what problems you naturally want to solve, and then surround yourself with people who want to stretch you, who want to make you better, not the people who are settling and are completely fine with everything. Doesn't mean you have to cut everybody out of your life, but give time and put yourself around. Like, don't just be the person in the room. Don't surround yourself with five people that you're not having conversations with. Surround yourself with people that you want to have conversations with, that are ahead of you, so that you can be part of those conversations, and then you can make those changes and those pivots and all those things. And like, finally, your thing might not exist yet. That's the thing. It's like, your thing might not be the thing that exists yet. You might be the person to create it. So be bold. Be bold enough to become the person that you wish existed when you were struggling. Be that person that you wish was there, that could give you the blueprint to have fulfillment in the things that you're doing. So yeah, that's what I'd say.
Ladies and gentlemen, the amazing Mr. James Gamet. James, thank you so much. This is an incredible conversation. I don't want to
Appreciate,
spoil the ending, so it was amazing. We're just gonna be heading out, and thank you for your time.
I appreciate you, Miguelly, you're the bad. If you guys are thinking about anything, health, nutrition, getting jacked, you guys better be doing his program, because this guy's the man.
Yep, y'all heard it here first that he will be starting his own podcast.
Let's go, 100%. No, no fans are about it. Let's go.
All right, brother.
All right, see you soon.